Most people think lowering blood pressure begins when they start walking faster, sweating harder, or forcing themselves into an exercise routine they may not enjoy. But here is what many people over 50 are never told. Some foods can start working on your blood pressure from the inside even while you are sitting still, not because they are magic, not because they replace exercise, and definitely not because you should stop taking medication prescribed by your doctor, but because blood pressure is not just a fitness problem, it is a chemistry problem, it is a blood vessel problem, it is a sodium problem, a potassium problem, a nitric oxide problem, an inflammation problem, and often, after 50, it becomes an artery stiffness problem. And once you understand that, food suddenly becomes much more powerful than most people realize. Because exercise lowers blood pressure partly by making the heart stronger and the blood vessels healthier over time. But the right foods can influence the pressure inside your arteries meal after meal, day after day, by changing the signals that tell your blood vessels whether to tighten or relax. That is why a person can walk every day and still struggle with high blood pressure if their arteries are constantly exposed to too much sodium, too little potassium, poor blood sugar control, chronic inflammation, and stiff, irritated blood vessel walls. And it is also why someone who starts eating the right foods consistently may see their blood pressure begin to move in the right direction, even before they become more active. So today I want to show you 7 foods that may support lower blood pressure in a way many people do not expect. And the last one is especially important because it does something deeper than simply relaxing the arteries. It may help calm one of the hidden inflammatory pathways that keeps blood vessels tight, aging, and resistant to change. But before we get there, we need to start with a food that looks ordinary, almost boring, yet quietly works on one of the biggest pressure systems in the body: oats. Now, oats do not look dramatic. They do not look like medicine. They do not look like something that could matter to the pressure inside your arteries. But oats contain a special kind of soluble fiber called beta-glucan. Soluble fiber means it dissolves and forms a gel-like substance in the digestive tract. Think of it like a sponge moving slowly through the gut, helping trap cholesterol particles, slowing the rush of sugar into the bloodstream, and supporting a more stable metabolic environment. Why does that matter for blood pressure? Because high blood pressure is often connected to more than salt. It is connected to insulin resistance, weight gain around the waist, cholesterol problems, and inflammation inside the blood vessel lining. When blood sugar rises too quickly and too often, the inner lining of the arteries, called the endothelium, becomes more stressed. This lining is not just a passive tube, it is an active organ. It releases signals that tell the artery to relax, tighten, repair, or become inflamed. And after 50, this lining often becomes more vulnerable. The arteries naturally become less elastic, and the body may not clear glucose, sodium, and inflammatory signals as efficiently as it once did. That is where oats may help. A bowl of plain oats in the morning can create a slower release of energy, more fullness, better cholesterol support, and less metabolic strain. The mistake many people make is turning oats into dessert. Instant packets with added sugar, flavored syrups, sweetened creamers, and processed toppings can cancel out much of the benefit. The better version is simple: about half a cup of dry rolled oats, cooked with water or unsweetened milk, then topped with cinnamon, a few berries, or a spoonful of ground flaxseed, which we will come back to later. And that brings us to the second food, because if oats help slow the metabolic traffic jam, berries help protect the roads themselves. Berries are not just fruit. They are one of the richest everyday sources of plant pigments called anthocyanins. These are the deep red, blue, and purple compounds found in blueberries, blackberries, raspberries, and strawberries. Inside the body, these compounds act less like a quick drug and more like a protective signal. They may help defend the artery lining from oxidative stress. Oxidative stress is what happens when unstable molecules, sometimes called free radicals, start damaging cells faster than the body can repair them. In the arteries, oxidative stress can reduce nitric oxide, and nitric oxide is one of the most important molecules for healthy blood vessel relaxation. Imagine your arteries as flexible garden hoses. Nitric oxide is one of the body's natural ways of telling that hose, relax, open up, let blood flow more easily. When nitric oxide is low, the hose becomes tighter. Pressure rises. The heart has to push harder. Berries may help support that inner blood vessel environment, not in a dramatic overnight way, but as part of a steady pattern that makes the arteries less irritated and more responsive. For adults over 50, this matters because blood pressure often rises silently. You may feel normal, but the vessels are under more force. That force can affect the brain, the kidneys, the heart, and even the tiny vessels in the eyes. A practical amount is simple: half a cup to 1 cup of berries most days. Fresh or frozen can work. Frozen berries are often cheaper and still useful. The key is not to bury them in sugar, pie crust, syrup, or sweetened yogurt. And that leads directly into the third food, because yogurt can be helpful, but only if you choose the right kind. Plain yogurt or kefir may support blood pressure in several ways. First, dairy foods naturally provide calcium, and calcium is involved in muscle contraction and relaxation, including the smooth muscle and blood vessel walls. Second, yogurt provides protein, which helps with fullness and metabolic health. Third, fermented foods may support the gut microbiome, the community of bacteria living in the intestines. Now, that may sound unrelated to blood pressure, but it is not. Your gut bacteria help produce compounds that can influence inflammation, blood sugar control, and even blood vessel behavior. When the gut microbiome is healthier, the immune system may be less likely to stay in a constant low-grade alarm state. And chronic low-grade inflammation is one of the hidden reasons blood pressure becomes harder to control with age. Remember, inflammation is not always bad. Acute inflammation is part of healing. If you cut your finger, inflammation helps repair the injury. The problem is persistent, low-level inflammation that never fully switches off. That kind of inflammation can make blood vessels more reactive, more tense, more likely to constrict. Plain yogurt or kefir may be useful because it fits into a larger blood pressure-friendly pattern, especially when it replaces sugary snacks or processed desserts. But the word plain matters. Many yogurts in the supermarket are closer to pudding than health food. They can contain large amounts of added sugar, candy-style toppings, fruit syrups, and artificial dessert flavors. That kind of yogurt may not help your blood pressure biology very much. A better choice is plain Greek yogurt, unsweetened yogurt, or plain kefir. Add your own berries. Add cinnamon, add a few chopped nuts. Keep it simple. Now, the fourth food is where the pressure-lowering story becomes more powerful, because we move from small daily support into one of the most important mineral shifts for blood pressure: potassium against sodium. Beans and lentils may be one of the most underrated blood pressure foods on the planet. They are rich in fiber, magnesium, plant protein, and potassium. And potassium is important because it helps counterbalance sodium. Sodium tends to hold water in the bloodstream. More fluid inside the blood vessels can mean more pressure against the artery walls. Potassium helps the body excrete more sodium through urine, and it also helps ease tension in the blood vessel walls. Think of sodium as the mineral that can make the body hold pressure, and potassium as one of the minerals that helps release pressure. The problem is that many people get this ratio backwards. Too much sodium from packaged foods, restaurant meals, processed meats, canned soups, salty snacks, and frozen meals, and not enough potassium from whole foods. Beans and lentils help correct that pattern, but they do something else that matters after 50. They improve the meal. When beans replace processed meats, refined carbohydrates, or salty convenience foods, you are not just adding one healthy food. You are removing a blood pressure trigger. Half a cup of beans or lentils most days can be a powerful habit. Add lentils to soup, add black beans to a salad, use chickpeas in a bowl with vegetables. Make a simple bean stew with garlic, onions, herbs, and olive oil. If you use canned beans, rinse them well. That one step can reduce sodium significantly. But there is an important caution. If you have chronic kidney disease, or if you take certain blood pressure medicines such as ACE inhibitors, ARBs, or potassium-sparing diuretics, you should not suddenly push potassium very high without medical guidance. In some people, potassium can build up in the blood, and that can be dangerous. So the message is not everyone should overload on potassium. The message is this: for many people, potassium-rich whole foods are part of a healthy blood pressure pattern, but kidney function and medication matter. Now, if beans and lentils help correct the sodium-potassium balance, the fifth food adds another blood vessel mechanism entirely. Leafy greens, spinach, arugula, Swiss chard, beet greens, kale, romaine, and collards all bring something valuable to the table. They contain potassium and magnesium, two minerals involved in vascular relaxation. But some leafy greens, especially arugula and spinach, also provide dietary nitrates. And nitrates from vegetables are important because the body can convert them into nitric oxide. This is one of the most important blood pressure pathways in the human body. Nitric oxide tells the smooth muscle in the artery wall to relax. When the artery relaxes, the inside of the vessel becomes wider. When the vessel becomes wider, blood can flow with less resistance. Less resistance usually means less pressure. It is like opening a narrow road into a wider lane. The traffic does not have to push as hard to get through. After 50, nitric oxide production often declines. Blood vessels can become stiffer, less responsive, and more inflamed. This is one reason systolic blood pressure, the top number, often rises with age. Leafy greens help because they provide the raw materials and minerals that support healthier vessel behavior. But again, the form matters. A small handful of spinach drowned in salty dressing is not the same as a real serving of greens. Aim for 1 to 2 cups of leafy greens most days if you tolerate them well. Add them to eggs, soups, smoothies, salads, or cooked vegetable dishes. Cooked greens can be easier for some people to digest, and they shrink down, making it easier to eat a meaningful amount. But here's the caution. If you take warfarin, do not suddenly start eating huge amounts of leafy greens without guidance. The issue is vitamin K. You do not necessarily need to avoid greens, but you need consistency. Big swings in vitamin K intake can interfere with how warfarin works. Now we come to the sixth food, and this is the one many people have heard about because it can act more directly on nitric oxide: beetroot. Beetroot is one of the most studied foods for the nitrate to nitric oxide pathway. When you eat beets or drink beet juice, the nitrates interact with bacteria in the mouth, then move through a process that can increase nitric oxide availability. That means beetroot may help blood vessels relax. And when blood vessels relax, pressure can come down. This is why beetroot juice has become popular not only among people watching blood pressure, but also among athletes trying to improve blood flow and endurance. But I want to be careful here. Beetroot is not a blood pressure medication. It does not work the same for everyone. The effect can be modest. And if your blood pressure is very high, beet juice is not a substitute for medical care. Still, for some people, it can be a useful food tool. You can eat roasted beets, grated beets in salad, beet soup, or small amounts of beet juice. If you use beet juice, more is not always better. Some people tolerate it well, others get digestive discomfort. Beetroot can also turn urine or stool reddish, which can be alarming if you do not expect it. And one more interesting point. Because the nitrate conversion starts with bacteria in the mouth, frequent use of strong antibacterial mouthwash may interfere with this pathway. That does not mean you should ignore dental hygiene. It means the mouth is not separate from the cardiovascular system. The bacteria there participate in chemistry that affects blood vessel relaxation. That is the kind of hidden connection most people never learn. Your blood pressure is not just controlled in your heart. It is influenced by your kidneys, your arteries, your gut, your mouth, your minerals, your inflammation level, your sleep, your weight, your stress hormones, and the foods you eat repeatedly. And now we come to the final food, the one I would pay special attention to if you are over 50 and trying to support healthier blood pressure from several angles at once: ground flaxseed. Flaxseed is small, but biologically it is not simple. It contains soluble fiber, plant-based omega-3 fat called alpha-linolenic acid, and compounds called lignans. Lignans are plant chemicals that interact with gut bacteria and may support cardiovascular and metabolic health. But the blood pressure story with flaxseed goes even deeper. Some research suggests flaxseed may influence inflammatory compounds involved in blood vessel tone. In simple terms, it may help shift the body away from chemical signals that keep arteries tighter and more irritated. This matters because many people try to lower blood pressure only by thinking about salt. Salt matters, but salt is not the whole story. If the arteries are inflamed, stiff, insulin resistant, and low in nitric oxide, then the pressure system remains tense. It is like trying to lower water pressure in a hose that has become rigid, narrow, and irritated from the inside. Flaxseed may help because it works on several systems at once. The fiber helps with cholesterol, fullness, bowel regularity, and steadier blood sugar. The omega-3 fats may support healthier inflammatory balance. The lignans may support the gut-heart connection. And when flaxseed is added to a better overall diet, it can become a small daily lever with surprisingly broad effects. But the key word is ground. Whole flax seeds often pass through the digestive tract without being fully broken down. That means you may not absorb much of the benefit. Ground flaxseed is more useful because the nutrients are accessible. A practical amount is 1 tablespoon per day to start, then possibly 2 tablespoons daily if you tolerate it well. Add it to oatmeal, yogurt, smoothies, soups after cooking, or sprinkle it over fruit. Start slowly. Flaxseed is high in fiber, and if you suddenly add too much, you may get gas, bloating, or digestive discomfort. Drink enough water with it. And if you take blood thinners, have a bleeding disorder, are scheduled for surgery, or have complex medical conditions, ask your clinician before using large amounts regularly. Now let's bring this all together, because the real message is not that you should eat one food and expect your blood pressure to magically normalize. That is not how the body works. The real message is that blood pressure is controlled by a system. Oats help slow the metabolic traffic jam. Berries help protect the inner lining of the arteries. Plain yogurt or kefir may support the gut and provide minerals that fit a blood pressure-friendly pattern. Beans and lentils help correct the sodium-potassium imbalance while improving blood sugar and fullness. Leafy greens support potassium, magnesium, and nitric oxide. Beetroot gives the body nitrate compounds that may help widen blood vessels, and ground flaxseed may support fiber, inflammatory balance, and artery function from several directions at once. But these foods work best together. They are not 7 separate miracles. They are 7 ways of sending the same message to your body. Relax the vessels, reduce the strain, calm the inflammation, improve the chemistry, and stop making the heart push against so much resistance. And this is where the title becomes important. Are these foods literally better than exercise? For some people, a DASH-style eating pattern can lower blood pressure by an amount that is very meaningful. Exercise is still powerful. Walking, resistance training, weight control, sleep, stress reduction, less alcohol, less sodium, and medication when needed can all matter deeply. But food has one advantage many people underestimate. You eat every day. That means every meal is either pushing your pressure system toward stiffness, sodium retention, and inflammation, or pulling it toward flexibility, mineral balance, and repair. So do not think of this as choosing food instead of exercise. Think of it as making your food do some of the work before exercise even begins. A simple day could look like this: oatmeal with berries and ground flaxseed in the morning, a bowl of lentil soup or beans at lunch, plain yogurt with fruit as a snack, and leafy greens with roasted beets at dinner. That is not extreme. That is not a fad. That is not a miracle cure. That is blood pressure biology on a plate. And if your blood pressure is already high, monitor it at home if your clinician recommends it. Do not stop medication on your own. Do not ignore very high readings. And if you have kidney disease, diabetes, heart disease, or take blood pressure medicines, blood thinners, or diuretics, make changes with professional guidance. Because the goal is not to replace medical care. The goal is to make your body easier to treat, easier to protect, and easier to heal. High blood pressure is often called silent because it may not cause symptoms for years, but silent does not mean harmless. Every day that pressure stays high, the heart works harder, the arteries take more force, and delicate organs like the brain, kidneys, and eyes live under more strain. The encouraging part is that the same silence can work in your favor. You may not feel oats protecting your metabolism, you may not feel berries supporting your artery lining, you may not feel potassium helping your body release sodium, you may not feel nitric oxide telling a blood vessel to relax, you may not feel flaxseed feeding the gut and calming inflammatory signals, but inside the body, small daily signals add up. And after 50, those signals matter. So here's the challenge. Choose just one of these foods and add it consistently this week. Not once, not as a health experiment you forget by Wednesday. Consistently. Then build from there, because lowering blood pressure is rarely about one heroic change. It is about removing pressure from the system, one meal, one habit, one signal at a time. If you already eat one of these 7 foods, share which one in the comments. And if you are going to try one this week, write it down below, because your choice may encourage someone else to begin. Like this video if it helped you understand blood pressure in a new way, subscribe for more science-backed health guidance for adults over 50, and share this with someone who thinks blood pressure is only about salt or exercise. Because once you understand the biology, you stop guessing, and you start giving your arteries what they have been asking for all along.